Part 4 of Seeking Advice. The Sunday Blues, other parts down below. Well, I can confidently say I'm not whooped now. It came to me last night. It feels great to say that. It's a great moment to know that you just don't care anymore. This is no reason to go back. The internal debate about pros and cons of the breakup doesn't even exist anymore. I just feel sad it all happened at all, I guess. Frustration at the process of a divorce and selling everything off, but I'll get over that. I think I might have a wine with a mate to celebrate that milestone tonight. I have already opened new bank accounts, boxed up her stuff, sold our investment property, and have a tradesman at home preparing the house for sale right now. Seeing my counselor regularly, spending time with family and friends. At the moment I'm preparing for a trip to Europe and USA for work that I'm doing alone. We'll spend some time doing a little tourist stuff for me in London, Hamburg, and New York. When I get back, I get on another plane to an 11-day surf trip. On the weekend I got a new surfboard and a bunch of gear. Emotionally I'm learning about my emotions and forcing myself to ask the question what makes me happy as often as I can. I already have plenty of weekend hobbies and have started the gym and squash since the year to meet new singles and stay fit. I think the most important thing is that in everything I do I keep asking myself the question, what do I want to do? What makes me happy? Having a harder day today. Had to message the WW to see if she planned to stay at the house and look after the dog and water the garden while I am away in USA and other places for 4 weeks, or whether I book a kennel and a gardener. She is playing the I'm not responding game, which is frustrating because I can see she might get nasty now. I was hoping we could do it amicably. Either that or she still expects me to crawl around after her. Based on our history and the pathetic level to which I found myself, it's entirely possible. I don't care, I am not playing that game. I also hear from a friend of mine that she is ringing all of our friends. His wife wouldn't divulge what she was saying, but obviously she is priming them with her version of events and that I'm a bastard for leaving her. I guess in the end, any friend that is worth her salt should be able to see through the bull crap and expect there to be two sides to every tale, but it is frustrating nonetheless. Whilst I haven't got too much of an issue with putting the dog in a kennel, although I would rather not, poor little guy, and hiring a gardener to water, money for jam, it's frustrating that she is playing games by not responding. Once again, very selfish and self-centered. I'm not expecting all this to be painless, but I'm hurting today and it pisses me off. Emotional vomit over. So now she calls back and says she wants sock catch-up tonight. I am sweating it. I have just gone through reminding myself that what is it that I want. I also accept that I only experience anxiety because I am still trying to control my warped view of her and the situation, and that I have to give in to the moment and just accept it for what it is. A cheating wife who has been unable to and is not going to change. Someone who I would not want in my life. She is not a princess. She is a flawed human being just like anybody else. We have come fundamentally from opposite ends of the emotionally available spectrum, and I'm amazed we ever got this far. I have also accepted that even if I had learned about my nice guy flaws years ago and how this affected the relationship, I still think that her complete inability to empathize in a relationship would have eventually ended the relationship anyway. I plan to sit down and write out an agreement with her about how we finalize division of our assets and proceed with divorce. For those who haven't been following, you can't file for 12 months. It has only been 5 since we separated. I guess I'm still a bit worried she will try to convince me to stay in the relationship. She came over, made it clear she didn't want it to get nasty, and we simply agreed that we would finish renovating the house and sell it, then divide up all the assets. I said fine and left to go out with mates. She was being really nice to me but said nothing emotional of our situation. On Sunday night I was leaving to go overseas the next morning, and she came over to house sit and look after the dog, so she stayed over in the other room. I had packed and went to bed. Before I did, she asked if I wanted a hug. I accepted, and it was a tearful hug on both sides. I felt she still wants me. She held me so tight. I said goodnight and walked away. At 4 a.m. when I was leaving, she got up again and came to me and hugged me again and cried. I said goodbye and left. So, it seems clear to me she still wants me, but why can she not open up and say a remorseful comment to me about all this? I have been reading No Nicer Guy and have realized my expectations for her are largely my internal covert contracts, and I am learning that I am the master of my feelings. But, if she wants me in her life, she needs to open up and show that she wants me. Why she can't or won't baffles me. Personally, I think the guilt of what she did has convinced her that to be less painful for her to close up and hope it all goes away instead of opening up, and at the same time knowing she is losing me. I don't know. I still see the situation as a complete waste. I find myself thinking of ways to try to save the marriage, ways of trying to initiate conversation, ways of getting her to open up about what she is thinking, who she is. Can she make this work? It's driving me batty. I know what you all think, and I think the same about myself. Stop punishing myself, move on. If she wants it, she will make it happen. Well, therein lies the problem. In the short term I'm not sure she will be able to make it happen, but I hold hope for the long term. And if I divorce now it will never happen. I know how this sounds, but it is the torture I am experiencing. Perhaps there is also some guilt-driven need to go through the actions of couples counseling, but in the end, she has moved on and she knows it. I think that is why she wanted to try to become friends again first. Because she isn't in love with me anymore, she doesn't respect me, and why she hasn't shown remorse or tried hard in counseling. It makes sense now, thanks. The next question is, do I just move on ASAP or leave the door open for a connection to form? Her long hard hug before I left makes me think she is starting to gain some respect after I said I was leaving. I think perhaps continue on my own path, and if she chases me down, perhaps. I'm beginning to see there is nothing I can do. Being away, I have had some time to think about what has happened quite a bit more. I hate that I am thinking about it all the bloody time, but at least I seem to be thinking more rationally. I seem to have accepted that nothing she has done reflects the actions of a person who is wholeheartedly trying to fix the marriage. It is my opinion now that while she may still have nostalgic love and friendship feelings for me, the primal love and desire for me was gone a long time ago, perhaps as long as a year ago. Instead of bringing this to my attention, her inabilities to communicate her feelings caused her to express these feelings in unhealthy ways, and by bottling it up. She did mention counseling perhaps twice in the last 2 years in the heat of 2 fights, but never once mentioned it again when the fight was over. I don't hold myself responsible for missing these calls for help, as she should be able to say these things when she is sober in normal daily life. I now believe that the affair was the result of her primal emotional self pushing her to leave me. It would be nice for her to admit to all this, as it would provide me with some closure, but I know this will never happen, and I'm sure I am close enough to the truth anyway. At this very moment, I am still open to I know, if she completely turns around and begs me, but I can't see this happening. And you know what, I'm okay with feeling that way right now. I can't force myself to hate someone. I will just take me some time to accept the events that have transpired. What is most important is that I no longer harbor any feelings to make it work, or to chase her, call her, contact her, or do really anything at all to push for R on my side. For me, that is a huge barrier I'm proud to say I have passed. All your support here has been the main thing that has pushed me to do so. I know it is over because her agreement to proceed with complete separation seemed all too easy, and to me simply means that me leaving her is a huge relief. That she didn't have to feel guilty anymore. I think that perhaps she felt she owed me the opportunity to try to save the marriage, but by not actually participating in saving it, meant that I would eventually leave her anyway. And by me leaving her, she didn't have to feel even worse than herself. I'm not sure what is worse, being dropped or being driven to leaving her. Much the same really. Anyway, I'm just glad I'm over the need to try to make it work now. Just got back from the bar telling people that is exactly what I need to do. I actually see myself very differently and actually view women a lot as you have described. I have always had the strength to do these things, but you know what? I just had no idea about what pleased women. I had been with only a couple of girls before I got married, and in reality, we both married projects. She married someone who would smother her with male attention because her dad was never present, and I sought continuous approval because my dad was never close with me and I had issues with my mom. That's what it boiled down to. For me, understanding of all of this is more than enough to enact my male ritual, so in that respect I do not worry about myself. I just didn't get it, and now I do. It is true that I was on the path to success in business when I met my wife, and also in the first 5 years of marriage. I got promoted from engineer to head of engineering to commercial manager of my division, with a clear path to general manager and part ownership of the company. In my early years, I was a strong, successful man with true independence. It is also true that communication issues within our relationship and my childhood nice guy syndrome tendencies causing me to crave attention, combined with my wife's inability to express her feelings, drove me down a path of depression. This depression stole me of everything I had: confidence, individualism, and the ability to express my emotions in a relationship. So, in a nutshell, I definitely have to find myself again and find the confident, strong, independent person again. It will take time, it will take commitment, and it will take focus. So here I am sitting at the JFK lounge anticipating what will happen when I get home. Will she be at the house? Will she do anything to try to get me back? Will she ignore me? Why do I care? Well, it's pretty simple really. I am still in love with her, and I hate myself for it. Now some of you will shake your head in shame, and others, I hope, will have been in my position. My brain says, just keep moving forward, mate, but my heart, honestly, still lives in the past. It is a pain I didn't ever think I would feel. I feel so lonely. I really don't know what to do with myself. I dare say my surf trip in a week with 10 blokes on a charter boat is about the best thing I could have done for myself. But, in the meantime, what I'm thinking is that I get home, and if I see her, I just let her have it. Completely confront her, say she ruined our relationship, tell her she hasn't done crap since. I had no interest in her all along, and if anything has put me through more pain in her vain effort to reduce her level of guilt by feigning the process of R when in reality she was long gone. Tell her she was gone a year ago, and tell her I don't know how she is going to live with herself. I think getting it all off my chest right back at her is about the only thing I can do right now to cut my emotional ties with her. I've realized that nice guy syndrome is not something you get over overnight. I found some emails I wrote her when we first started our relationship. Oh my God, what a pushover and suck up. I was apologizing for nothing and worshipping the ground she walked on whilst she did nothing. I couldn't believe it. I began to realize that she stayed with me because I was basically, well, her personal slave. The longer our relationship went forward and the more I became independent, although to a small degree, it's clear this frustrated her and she sought this attention elsewhere. I began to realize just how whipped I was, and honestly, I has no idea. So, you can see my pattern of behavior has been reinforced and reinforced over 12 years. And what does a nice guy do when he doesn't get love back? Try even harder doing the wrong things. The lack of response from her drove me into depression and caused her to see me as even less of a man than she already did. Well, I see these things now, and this is probably the clearest illustration to me that I do deserve an equal in a relationship. The most messed up thing is that her animal instinct says to her she wants a man, a leader, but her conscious self just wants someone to pander over her, be there for her every need, worship her. Completely contradictory. Essentially, I think that despite the strong shell she surrounds herself with, she was a burning need for daddy attention. Something she never had in her life, and probably explains why she got straight A's her whole life. It's also sad. I will get there, and it is truly embarrassing when people tell me they pity me because I don't respect myself. It's just something I have to relearn, and it is probably going to take me a long time. Just went on some dating sites, and holy crap, are there some good-looking single girls out there. It seems that while I am away, she is doing her best to pull our friends around her with a view to push me out of our groups of joint friends. A difficult situation. When do you walk and when do you fight for your mates? Made an interesting step forward with my therapist this morning. I admitted I still had feelings for the WW, and rather than question this feeling, he said, let's really look into what exactly that love is. He asked me to explain it. I became clear that a lot of the words I used to describe my wife were not describing essence of an intimate relationship with a deep connection. I used the words kind, thoughtful, nice, giving, generous, comforting. In essence, I was describing the person that my mother should, but wasn't, have been for me. He asked me to explain a moment in our relationship when we had a deep connection. I thought and really had nothing. I said that perhaps there was a time 3-4 years into our marriage when I felt a connection with my wife, but it was never right on her surface, it was always in her background, just poking its head out to see what was going on. I couldn't believe it. We explored how I saw my wife, and it became evident that childhood experiences, or lack of, meant that I craved approval and attention, and that the giving that the WW did for me became part of a fantasy for me. I used the attention I was getting and used my fantasy to see this attention as a deep connection and love from my W. And being someone who desperately craved approval, I became incredibly focused on getting more attention and approval, which I turned into love and the feeling of a connection. This also explains my difficulty detaching from her, as she is still doing nice things for me, and I have trained myself to see this as a deep love. My clearer view of what was our relationship now allows me to see my W's emotional limitations so clearly now. It is no longer baffling to me. It has always been that way. Even now, she keeps doing nice things for me, ending messages ending in, love W. I now do not believe that she is doing these things consciously or maliciously, and that she also has a warped sense of what love and intimacy is. For her, love is a man who will chase her, pander over her, give her attention, lead her, provide for her, and be strong and independent. In essence, her ideal love is her dad, who was never there. So, it has become clear that we both had our own warped fantasy of what love and intimacy was in our relationship, and that our fantasies were completely contradictory and destructive. It's a wonder our marriage lasted so long. I guess we always got along well as friends and had great chemistry, and I guess for the most part that kept us moving along in the fog. Wow, I'm a bit shell-shocked. We are sleeping in separated rooms. I am actually doing this process for me. Let me explain. I do not ever want to regret anything I have done in this process of divorce. This is because I want to move on with all doubt put behind me. Until now I have done everything I can, and anyone who has read this thread will see I have bled trying to save the relationship. But now I have grown, and I am confident and happy all by myself. I am ready to date again. Apart from the renovating practicalities, I think that having her in the house for a short period of time satisfies any remaining doubt about giving her every possible opportunity to do good, to save herself, and for her to actually attempt to save the relationship, etc. What is important is that I do not care about the outcome, but I do care a lot for my own emotional security and clarity in the future. I do not want to have a single ounce of doubt left in my mind about divorcing her. Once I am gone, I want to be gone without a single trace of doubt or regret, so that I will be happy and carefree. I am doing this for me. I'm happy with who I am now, I'm happy by myself, and happy I'm strong and independent. My trip away has put real clarity to my life, who I am and how I respect myself now. I'm leaving on Friday morning and will be away for 2 weeks, so to be honest, I'm hardly going to see her. And when I get back, she will be moving out. For me, it's my final 4-day cleansing of any remaining feelings I have for her. Having her in my presence and seeing her doing nothing to try to come back to me only reinforces my happiness in my choice to leave her. It really matters not to me anymore whether it was physical or emotional. What has happened has happened. It is in the past. I have worked hard on myself. I have grown and I am happy with what I have done and who I am. That is all that really matters. I understand that what I am allowing this week is seen as a backward step by many here, but it isn't for me. It's my way of moving on without a single shred of regret. I'm a country mile further along in my own confidence and security. I'll be fine. Unfortunately, I cracked a rib when I was skiing, so the amount of surfing is in doubt. But I'm taking painkillers and we'll see how I go. I have said she is to move back out prior to my return from holidays. She is staying only this week to renovate the house for sale while she is on holidays. The only chance I have given her is this week. No change of plan to that. Today's update. You know what? Having the WW in the house has allowed me to take that last step away from her. I am just plain turned off by her now, and the whole idea of being with such an insecure, manipulative, emotionally locked down, clueless person is something I now find impossible. I confronted her again about the most recent events, saying that she had not even tried to talk to me about them, not tried to resolve them, had never tried during MC, had never asked me how she could help me after the affair, had never provided phone passwords. The longer we talked, the more frustrated and absolutely dumbfounded I became at her responses. She was saying things like, "You just gave me all these terms and conditions." I was completely shocked. Then came the moment of clarity. This is a woman who has not ever been able to communicate her worries, her emotions, or her deepest issues to her husband. It turns out that for her, this all started after we had a miscarriage and then my low sperm quality leaving us with little chance of having a child. I would suggest this had a serious and profound effect on the way she viewed me. Did she tell me this? No. Did we agree to try IVF? Yes. Did she back out of it? Yes. For me, at the same time as the miscarriage, her lack of communication skills mean that my emotional and practical needs were not being attended to. I would get continuously shut down during arguments, so I simply buried my issues. That turned into depression and resulted in a subconscious dislike for my wife. I became a typical nice guy where I just tried harder and harder to make her like me, all the while outwardly not actually being the nice guy I thought I was. I became passive-aggressive. Anyway, in this moment of clarity, whilst I was listening to her claim that she had tried to save the marriage, whilst having had actually done nothing at all, I realized that this is a person who has not changed, does not take the affair seriously. In fact, it's the least of her worries, is more hung up on my inability to father a child naturally, and blames me entirely for the breakdown of our marriage. In that moment, my view of her changed, became clear. This is a damaged person who is incapable of sucking it up, accepting the past is the past and working to fix it. She has not grown at all during this process. It explains why she has done nothing. It explains why she is incapable of taking the affair seriously. In that moment, I knew I was over her. I still have feelings for her which I'm sure are natural, but I know now that deep down, this is not a person I can ever be with again. I'm over her. I am back from my surfing holiday. 12 days in tropical paradise in the islands in Indonesia. I have had a lot of time to reflect on what has happened in the past, and also time to more clearly understand the personalities and emotional events during this trauma for both myself and my wife. I am now calm, collected, and composed. I am well clear of the fog, and all aspects of our relationship and our personalities now seems clear to me. The results of this reflection are somewhat surprising though, and I thought it worth sharing my emotion and events since I have returned. I think these observations are worth sharing because I would suggest that it does illustrate the capacity for some relationships to be saved after an affair, and in what way that can happen. I have observed a clarity and calmness in myself that I have not experienced for at least 6-7 years. Most of my marriage, in other words. I have accepted that I still love my wife dearly and that there are a great many things about her that I like. Upon returning home, I still had little idea of what she was thinking, feeling deep down, and this is reflective of our marriage. Upon returning home, I was nervous but felt compelled to simply say how I felt to her. I told her I was nervous to see her. I told her I still loved her a great deal and that I now viewed the breakdown of our marriage as a great tragedy. Upon going to bed, I felt compelled to hold her and kiss her, so I went to her room and I did. We lay together and spoke about what had happened, and she told me of her love for me and that she was simply unable to be the person that I need and deserve in my life. She said that I was a good person and that she was ashamed that she was unable to ever open up in our relationship. We both reflected on the events of the last 7 months and that we both felt like they happened 1,000 years ago, like a dream. She said that her inability to open up is how she has always been and that she feels most comfortable living that way. I asked why she couldn't, wouldn't, can't, and her response was finally a tiny glimpse into her personality, something I had never heard her ever talk about. She said that she was like that so that she couldn't ever be hurt. I said that what she said was one of the saddest things I had ever heard, and I said that I was so sad that she had lived that way her entire life. She responded with, "Why? This is how I have always been." Her tone was one of normality, as though it was completely normal and fine. A great realization swept over me. This is a person who has clearly experienced some form of deep trauma during her childhood or is simply unable to cope emotionally with the trauma of being hurt, or both. At that moment I knew that these behaviors are so ingrained, so much a part of her fabric, that they are unlikely to ever change. To me, it was one of the saddest things I had ever heard. To live life without ever actually feeling anything, without ever actually opening yourself up completely to someone. To miss out on one of life's greatest gifts, a deep emotional connection with another person. The discussions I had with my PC about the feelings I had for my wife being part of a fantasy were reinforced. They made sense now. The fantasy I created was one of necessity, to fill an emotional hole in my relationship. What was missing, never there. I asked her how she ever expected to have a lasting, meaningful relationship with someone in future if she didn't ever open up and offer her true self to that person. She said, "I don't know, I don't think I ever will. Perhaps I'm just not meant to be in a relationship like that." We both agreed that it was a miracle that our relationship lasted so long, but we also agreed that it did so because every other aspect of our relationship was as near perfect as we could have imagined. She told me that she had seen my inner soul during the entirety of our relationship and was very reliant on how I felt all the time. She explained that when I slipped into depression, she felt an amplified version of it. She admitted that she knew all along through our relationship that she wasn't showing her inner self and felt sad she had the affair as an escape from the problems she saw in the relationship. She admitted that she felt unable to work on the relationship because it involved her opening up and telling me about her deepest worries and emotion, something that she has never done and didn't feel safe doing so. And so, here I sit today, with clarity, but sadness, knowing that this is a person that I still hold dear to my heart, that I know I simply cannot have a future with. I know that my need includes the ability to share emotions at the deepest level with a partner, and that my wife cannot offer that to me, or anybody. I also accept that a small part of my love for her includes some aspects of fantasy, and were not real at all. I suppose I also need to admit that some part of me hopes that she would be able to change, but I know that these lifelong behaviors, with deep emotional barriers, she might change one day, but it will be a lifelong journey for her, and she seems to accept that she is unable to change for now. And so, the greatest tragedy of my life seems to have ended. The story is complete. A chapter to a new life must begin. My current state of happiness, clarity and calmness is absorbed and amplified by my wife, and she is now as she was at the start of our marriage, a happy, giving, loving person. She is very much in love with me again, and me her, but we both have come to accept that our relationship dynamic cannot work in the future. She is simply unable to be truly open in a relationship. Last night's expression of love toward each was indulgent and comforting, and despite its risks, was an important process in completing the story of our relationship. To me, last night's interaction is very much a part of my closure on the relationship. The problem for me was that I unknowingly began to resent my wife's inability to communicate deeper feelings and really address my emotional needs. I didn't even know this was going on in myself. I hid it well by creating a fantasy that my wife was meeting all my needs and I was happy. All the while, I hid my real emotional needs, which then turned into depression, which was externalized in a passive-aggressive manner. Remember that I wasn't even aware of this whole situation within myself. I was just a bit unhappy in life and kept buying new toys to try to fill a hole that couldn't be filled. During this time, my wife, who fed off my externalized feelings, became turned off as I was no longer supplying her with her needs, a nurturing father figure basically. So, I would say that yes, I was emotionally open and to her at the start, but unknowingly began to give up on this as the wife continued not to give anything back for the entire duration of the relationship. What I have learned is that I think that any couple that can open up and make that close communication connection should be able to work through nearly any problem, and was the motivation for posting my update. We spoke more last night and had yet another intimate moment. In fact, we had slept together this morning. Whilst this may seem risky and dangerous, it has allowed her to talk about how she feels for the first time in this whole process. And I am enjoying simply letting life happen for once without trying to manipulate its path. I'm finding it is so spiritually rewarding and fulfilling to live life that way for the first time. She has elaborated much of what you have said about living a simple life. Whilst I still have feelings for her, additional comments of concern overnight include: I need someone in my life to push me to be more independent, to not rely on the other person so much. I need someone who will always be there to support me, provide me with security. I don't want to talk about my emotions, I just want to live my life. I don't feel safe talking about how I feel. I was awake most of the night thinking about these comments. Boy, am I knackered. I have come to the conclusion that living life without talking about how we feel might be possible in our relationship when all is happy and well. And it was for 6 years. But the problem arises when the same communication skills are required to resolve issues that arise within the relationship. I have come to accept exactly what you have suggested, that some people find it difficult, exhausting to communicate emotional feelings, and that the next person I meet will also have their unique wavelength. Everybody is different after all, and that is one of the beautiful complexities of life. But, in this particular case, I cannot live without communication skills in our relationship which would allow issues to be resolved promptly and completely for both people. If anything, last night reinforced these key differences between us that wouldn't allow the marriage to continue successfully. She did suggest just trying to see where things go with the current intimacy in mind, but I can see it isn't going to work. She is moving out again next weekend, planned while I was away, and I plan to let her go and continue with the sale of the house. I also asked her what her ideal partner would be if we were to part ways permanently. Her response was someone who is strong, confident, and has money so I can quit work, someone who doesn't need to talk about their emotion, someone who can support me no matter what. Malicious, perhaps real world. Yup, this may be an extreme case of a woman with high expectations and demands. Women respond more to strong, stable, successful, financially stable men before considering emotional connectivity. With this in mind, I fully respect the realistic expectations that a lot of women have for men, and that emotional compatibility is something that is of secondary importance for a lot of people. What my wife forgot is that I am successful, financially secure, strong, and more than willing to support her, but during our marriage, I lost individualism, masculinity, happiness, confidence, and career direction. These things I have back now. My point is that whilst I have a good handle over the emotional aspects of our relationship, I am also mindful of the practical attributes which attract women and are required to maintain a new relationship with a woman. This is just how it is, and I accept that now. In fairness, I did ask what her ideal man would be, so I guess many women would say they would want a man with money. But yet, in the context of our situation and the discussion, I would agree she doesn't do herself justice with a comment like that. Kind of made me angry and was a real turnoff for me from a relationship point of view. If asked the same question, I think I would just ask for a woman who is happy, has integrity, can be empathetic, and then I can only hope it is someone on a similar emotional wavelength. My comment: she wants to be a spoiled princess with a sugar daddy. Her words show just how selfish and entitled she really is. Is she at least trophy wife material that a sugar daddy would want? Next part is the ending to OP's journey of detachment. You think he will come out stronger? Comment down and see you there.